Hello and welcome to the St. Charles City County Library's virtual program on museums in the St. Louis area. My name is Shauna and I work at the Augusta branch of the library. Whether you're interested in the arts, science, history, or just need a spot for the kids to play and learn a thing or two, St. Louis has a museum for you. In fact, St. Louis has lots of museums for you. This talk will show the audience the grand array of museums we have in the St. Louis area, from the small museums, saxophones, beer brewing, mastodons, and fire engines, to the large world-class museums. Our oldest museum is from 1881. Our newest museum is from spring of 2024. Our presenter, Doug Schneider, graduated from Ivy League Brown University with a bachelor's in history. He also graduated from the University of London with a master's in linguistics. Doug is an author, a St. Louis walking tour guide, and he's a Route 66 enthusiast, just to name a few of his studied interests. So let's get started. Don't forget to use the chat feature to answer some questions during tonight's presentation. And if you think of a question along the way, type it in and we'll use that at the end of the presentation to check in with Doug. So welcome, Doug, and thank you for being here tonight.
Okay, let me share my screen. I'm going up here and I'm going to tell PowerPoint that I want to go to the beginning. So, Michelle, can you hear me and can you see? Well, no, let's go previous. Can you see a duck?
Now I still see it. Oh, now I see a duck.
Now you see a duck. All right, so this is where we want to be. If it walks like a duck and swims like a duck and quacks like a duck, then it probably is a duck. Likewise, if it walks like a museum and swims like a museum and quacks like a museum, it probably is a museum. So that's the definition I'm using for what is a museum. It's going to be a whirlwind tour. It's a whirlwind tour because I'm looking at 120 museums in the St. Louis area. This is not the entire list. There's more, but I'm just focusing on these. And these museums are within a 35-mile radius of St. Louis City Hall, considering a reasonable driving distance from St. Louis City Hall. And it's both sides of the Mississippi River and the Missouri River. There we go. That's the circle. Now, you'll get a list of the 159 museums in the St. Louis area, but this list will not include historic house museums. You might know the Campbell House, the Demenil Mansion, the Couples House. There are 89 historic house museums. They're not in the list. They're not in this talk. Okay. And this talk will go alphabetically. And we're going to start with the Rock Mill Museum over in Maystown, Illinois, which you can see is a nice rock building. And this guy is on the lawn and he's cooking apples, vinegars, and spices. And he is making what? Now, you're all muted, so you can just blurt out the answer, which of course is apple butter over there in Maystown. The American Farm Heritage Museum is in Greenville, Illinois. You can see this welcoming tractor display. Here is a Christmas display at this museum, but there's a plus to this museum in that there's a train, and you can ride around the museum on this train over in Greenville. Now, Anheuser Estate, this is where the Anheuser family decided to build a nice home on the Mississippi River in Kimmswick. And it's the museum. You can go into the house and see what they have to show you in the house. But you'll notice there are some fences here as well, because they do horseback riding for disabled children. That's another feature of the Anheuser estate. And you can see that kid is having quite a nice time. Well, Anheuser-Busch in their brewery has the old schoolhouse museum, and that has various beer memorabilia in it for you to look at. Back to Greenville. Greenville actually has a number of museums. They have an Armed Forces Museum there in Greenville, and they're very proud of it, of course. Now, Army Aviation in Creve Coeur, they have a flying museum I'll just mention to everybody that I am a honor graduate of the Army Aviation School. So this would be a favorite museum of mine. And here are some of the helicopters that they have there in Creve Coeur. Arnold, they have this house that is devoted to their museum, which is about the history of Arnold. The Audubon Center, that's on the Mississippi River. You can see it over there. And they are a museum about birds. You can see the birds up there in the ceiling. And that's quite a nice place to visit because you can see the museum and there's lots of nice things to walk around and see up there. Now, the Bond County Museum, Greenville again. And they have various small museums under the Bond County label. And here is somebody who has a banner. They voted for Lincoln. Yep, that's in Illinois. Our whirlwind continues, and we're going to try and correct New Orleans. New Orleans claims that the Ursuline Convent, 1745, is the oldest building in the Mississippi Valley. Sorry. That is not the oldest building. We've got the oldest building, which you can visit. The oldest building in the Mississippi Valley is this building here. And it is the Cahokia Courthouse. It's 1740. So that's 5 years older than the building in New Orleans. And you can visit it, and it's set up for you to walk through and see things over in Cahokia. Well, since you're in Cahokia, you're not too far from the Cahokia Mounds Museum, which is in Cahokia Mounds, which that's odd to me that the Cahokia Mounds are in Collinsville. But in any event, the Cahokia Mounds Museum, built by the state of Illinois and highly rated by people who visit here and tell me that they went there and they like the museum. However, here's some artifacts from the golden days of Cahokia. Right now, the museum is closed for mechanical renovations. There's a little hint that they did leave part of the museum open. And that part of the museum, of course, would be the gift shop. We're still in Illinois for this one, Camp Du Bois or Camp Du Bois, whatever you want to pronounce it. This is where Lewis and Clark camped waiting for the Louisiana Purchase to go through. So it is basically dedicated to Lewis and Clark memorabilia. Oh, Cardinals Hall of Fame. And we're back in downtown St. Louis. And here's some pictures on the wall. And the first person to be inducted into the Cardinals Hall of Fame was a pitcher. And you can blurt out the answer if you know that. The first person, this pitcher, you got a hint. You're getting a hint about his name. Each year, one National League pitcher and one American League pitcher receive a prestigious award named after this guy, the first inductee. And that name would be Cy Young. So that award would be the Cy Young Award. That's one National League pitcher and one American League pitcher. Oh, another question for you. Where was the first kindergarten in the United States? Hopefully you know this.
St. Louis.
Carondelet, Missouri. We're being a little more specific here. Okay. Now, here is the Carondelet Historic Center, which is rather large and has a whole bunch of stuff in it, including this, which is a replica of the first kindergarten, which was an idea imported from Europe. Notice no individual desks, just communal desks. And notice what's on that particular table there. These blocks. These blocks were blocks for kindergartners to use. Susan Blow, you saw a mannequin of her a little earlier. She took these blocks to the U.S. Centennial in Philadelphia, 1876. And a woman named Mrs. Wright bought a set of those blocks for her son. What was the name of Mrs. Wright's son? And the answer is Frank Lloyd Wright. He got this gifted to him by his mother, these blocks, and these blocks were a big inspiration for him to become an architect. Look at these blocks, and now look at this building. You can see that they kind of an inspiration there. So anyway, Carondelet is where you have the first kindergarten in the US. The Challenger Learning Center is for kids to learn about space travel. So it's got quite a nice place. And speaking of kids, the Children's Museum of Edwardsville, this focuses on younger kids, the 5 to 9-year-olds. And here are some of those kids enjoying the museum in Edwardsville. Whoa, 2022. What museum celebrated 25 years of organized craziness? Well, I hope when you think of organized craziness and you think of museums, you think of this museum. That's right, the City Museum. 20, now it's more than 25 years old. Mirth, mystery, and mayhem. And here's a view with the little Ferris wheel up on top. And if you like, they will arrange for you to get married in the City Museum. Now, the City Museum, we know, is organized by Bob Casserly. Bob Casserly was visiting the Vatican City in 1972. He was in St. Peter's Cathedral when somebody attacked a statue. And Bob Casserly disarmed the guy who was attacking the statue, had help with a couple other people, and saved the statue. What statue in the Vatican was saved by Bob Casserly? That's the Pietà, Michelangelo's Pietà. You can see here photographed. There are a bunch of people dealing with the guy that had the hammer. Our whirlwind tour continues to Collinsville. Now that's a nice looking museum there. And nice display in Collinsville history and other things, because this guy here stole something from the Collinsville Historical Museum. And what did he steal? He stole a copy of Hitler's Mein Kampf. So that was an authentic Mein Kampf that the museum had. It was recovered, so it's still there. Air Force. We have a number of air museums. The Commemorative Air Force is actually national. It's in about a dozen cities with a flying museum in each city. In this case, with Portage de Sioux up on the Missouri River. Here's their hangar. And here's something from the Japanese Air Force from World War II. Right, from the airfield, we go to a swan in the pond in front of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod International Center. And in the center is the Concordia Historical Institute Museum. Okay, and this is obviously artifacts regarding the Lutheran religion. And I believe they do have a full replica of the door where Martin Luther nailed his theses to the door proclaiming the Lutheran religion. The Contemporary Art Museum, that's an eye-catching building, and it has interesting exhibits. There's no, just contemporary artists just do anything they like. And this museum is a comfortable museum. They actually have nice soft chairs you can sit in. They have reopened their cafe, and it's free. Whoa! Somebody saw weird stuff in the Curiosity Museum over in Alton. All right, that's actually newly named. That's a new name. And here is one of these things you can do. It's the Wheel of Death, and you can spin to learn how you will croak. For example, it could be prescription meds, or it could be skydiving, or it could be a jealous lover. You get to spin this. And inside the Curiosity Museum is an even more curious museum, and we'll get to that one a little later. Oh, wait a minute. We're back in Greenville, Illinois. The Demolin Museum. Demolin is a company that started off manufacturing band uniforms, the largest manufacturer of band uniforms in the United States. And then they decided they would also manufacture pranks. So the museum has band uniforms and pranks. This is the prank where typically it's a woman up against a wall and a guy throwing knives at her, and the knives wind up beside her, never hit her, because it's all a prank, it's all a joke, and this is manufactured over there in Greenville. I'm not sure if the company's still doing this stuff, because pranks aren't as popular as they used to be. Car museum. Car museums basically have one main purpose. The main purpose is to sell you a car. The secondary purpose is to show you old cars that are nicely on display, because they're hoping that you will buy a car. But this museum has lots of things regarding gasoline. You see gasoline signs, the old gas pump, the glass pump, where you could see your gasoline. You could tell whether it was tainted or not because there's this glass pump. And those artifacts about petroleum is called Petroliana. We go to Fenton. That's got a nice little house there. And about events in Fenton, Missouri. This was the flood of 2017 in Fenton. It's one of my favorite childhood rhymes, Winkin', Blinkin', and Nod. Who wrote this child's poem in 1889? Eugene Field. Eugene Field lived in St. Louis, and he lived in the house you see on the right, and they built a museum, a toy museum, right next to the Field House Museum. So, and you can still go see the toys, and you can see books by all these works. He wrote lots and lots of books, but that poem has been set to music. And here are the Doobie Brothers.
Winking and blinking and on one night sailed off in a wooden shoe. Sailed on a river of crystal light into a sea of blue.
Okay, a little history this time. The first capital of Missouri was in St. Charles. Second one was in St. Louis in Cleves Landing. Third one, of course, is Jefferson City. So this is preserved as a museum, and you can go inside and see what the first capital looked like. Now, Frederick A. Douglass Museum of African American Vernacular Images. Okay, the images, of course, implies photographs, and this is a museum by appointment only. It's on Millionaires Row, and it's in a historic house. And you'll hear a little more about Millionaires Row in a moment. Over the other side of the Missouri River, Frenchtown Heritage Museum is a section of St. Charles. It's called Frenchtown. And here is a diorama in the Frenchtown Heritage Museum. Our whirlwind now goes to another car museum, Fallon, Illinois, and they would like you, again, to buy these cars. Any one of these, they will gladly sell to you. Now, here's another African-American museum. It happens to be basically across the street from the museum I showed you before. George B. Vashon African-American Museum, focused on railway porters, but lots and lots of memorabilia. This is a lamp, African-American memorabilia, and the owner, who basically this is his collection, is very, very easy to convince him to show you around his museum. Let's put it that way. Now, going back to Illinois, Glen Carbon, that town obviously has turned an old school into its museum with various things from the history of Glen Carbon. Now, this is a new museum. You can see a little sign here. They're in this building, the Gospel Music Hall of Fame, and they are starting off, and we'll wish them well to maintain a museum in that beautiful building. Grace's Place is up in Umsel, Normandy, Missouri, and Grace's Place is about computers. So if it's called Grace's Place and it's about computers, I'm going to ask you this question. What's Grace's last name? Grace's Place was named after this woman, who you can see is in the U.S. Navy. Her name was Grace Hopper, and she was the one who said computer languages should be understood by everybody, and she invented COBOL, and she just got the idea that computers should be available and used by people and not so obscure. Well, here's a museum. It was closed for a while, but I'm really happy that it's open. I like it a lot. It's over in Cahokia, and it's the airport over there, and it's an old hangar. You go in the hangar, and you can sit in a jet. You can sit in a jet if you like, and then you can see various things. They have the Ozark flight attendants uniforms on display, but they also have pilot's licenses on display. Who signed this pilot's license? Right there, Orville Wright. He signed pilot's licenses. He also signed balloon pilot's licenses as well as airplane pilot's licenses. Yes. Oh, back to Black history, back to the same street the other two African American museums are on. So this is the Griot Museum. Griot is the name for a West African, basically storyteller who tells stories through music, but the idea is it tells history. So this is the Museum of Black History, appropriately named, with various displays. And then we asked this question because this is the new name for the Griot Museum. What was the former name? Here's a wax mannequin, which would give you a hint that it was the Black World History Wax Museum. So we have 3 African American museums on Millionaires Row. Millionaires Row is St. Louis area, St. Louis Avenue, near Crown Candy Kitchen. The 3 museums are in this area here, 1, 2, 3. But that area there, getting a new neighbor, the NGA is coming, and right now they're constructing it in that area. Our whirlwind goes to the Henry Miller Museum. And what you should notice over on the right is a guy on a telephone pole, because this is a museum for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. And in the museum is this table with chairs around the table, one for each founder of the IBEW. If you count the chairs, you'll count the number 10. And there were 10 delegates that founded the IBEW in this building. Now, hopping over to Highland, Illinois, this is the Highland History Museum for the town of Highland, Illinois. Oh, we're in Greenville again. Look at this. This is an old fort that they have maintained, and it's in very nice condition, and of course are free to visit the Hills Fort, which is put together by the Hills Fort Society. Okay, aircraft. We're a hotbed of aircraft museums, not surprising, since we have McDonnell Douglas and Boeing and so forth here. This is at the Creve Coeur Airport, the Historic Aircraft Restoration Museum, and these are aircrafts that they have restored. And you can go visit them in Creve Coeur. Oh, wait a minute. Welcome to Alton for the Museum of Torture Devices. Yes, Torture Devices has its own museum inside the Curiosity Museum. So this is the even more curious museum, made torture devices. So you get curiosity and torture one visit over there in Alton. What is the oldest continuously active Catholic parish in the United States? That is also in Illinois, Holy Family Parish, founded in 1699. And they have a museum over there next to their old church. And you have various artifacts there. Also in St. Louis, over in Illinois, East St. Louis, we have the House of Miles, and that is Miles Davis's house. And you can visit for various exhibits. And I believe they do have a concert or two there as well. Our whirlwind takes us to the Federal Reserve Bank inside the Economy Museum. The Federal Reserve Bank used to be just like a bank. You could walk into it and buy a certificate of deposit. I know that for a fact because I used to do that, but they don't have teller windows anymore, but they have preserved the teller windows area and made it part of the inside the Economy Museum, which is a very nicely done museum. And you can actually get, there are people there who will guide you through if you want to get guided, and they're there to answer your questions. Even if you're not in a group, you will be able to get questions answered inside the Economy. Well, we're going to go way out west to Wentzville, International Horseshoe Pitchers Hall of Fame. Horseshoe pitching is a big deal. Okay, here's a whole museum devoted to horseshoe pitching. And these are people in the Hall of Fame from all over the country, men and women. Oh, did I miss? I missed a slide. Okay, let's go next. All right, we'll go to the International Photography Hall of Fame. That is upstairs here. The Triumph Grill is no longer an operating restaurant, and it's upstairs. And this museum was in San Diego and decided to come to St. Louis, that St. Louis was a better place to be for a museum. The Jefferson Barracks Ordnance Museum. This is not the old Ordnance Museum. This is the Jefferson Barracks Ordnance Museum. This museum is for bombs and missiles and who knows what else. And it takes up a building here at Jefferson Barracks. We'll be looking at the ordnance room later on at Jefferson Barracks. Oh, speaking of Jefferson Barracks, who invented the dial tone? Actually invented by a funeral director in Kansas City. Remember, before dial tones, there were operators. You picked up the phone and there was Gladys. And you said, Gladys, please connect me to the Wilson's house. And Gladys would connect you. Well, in Kansas City, Gladys was married to a funeral director. And people would have someone die in their family and they would call up, distraught Gladys, I need connect me to a funeral parlor. And of course, Gladys connected them to her husband's funeral parlor. Another Kansas City funeral parlor director invented the dial tone, so you got rid of Gladys. You didn't need a woman there to answer. Okay, so it was a funeral director in Kansas City. And how would you know about this? You find out at the Telephone Museum in Jefferson Barracks. They offer tours. I suggest you always take a tour rather than go on your own, because a lot of this stuff just looks like equipment, but the volunteers who all worked for Western Union, which is an equipment manufacturing company, they will give you the background. And here is a dinosaur phone for you. Judicial Learning Center in the courthouse is for people to learn about the judicial system in St. Louis and Missouri. And here is the Holocaust Museum. This is brand new. kind of near where the old Holocaust Museum was, but if you saw the old one, this will be a nice surprise, much larger and more comprehensive than the old Holocaust Museum was. Back in East St. Louis, Catherine Dunham. If you recognize that name, you'll know that she was a dancer. So the museum is devoted to music and dance over in East St. Louis. Our whirlwind takes us to Kimmswick. They have a museum for their history in Kimmswick. And you'll notice this is a prehistoric site that was excavated in Kimmswick, the Herald site. Over in Belleville, Labor and Industry Museum, discussing obviously labor and industry, just what they say they're going to talk about. McLeod's Landing Wax Museum. This is a treat. It has wax figures from London, and lots of them. Here is a Cardinals batter, and there's 3 stories, the first floor, the second floor, and the basement. The basement is for creepy wax figures, well, like murderers and thugs and that sort of stuff. The people in the museum know when you're down there, and they turn off the lights and surprise you. So what you should do is, if you go with some people and you go to the basement, you know it's going to go black at some point, and be ready when it goes black to tickle people on the back of their necks and make them scream. Right. Well, the Sculpture Park, Loudmire, does have a museum. It's called the Adam Aronson Fine Arts Center. So you can see some art indoors, and of course, lots of nice things to see outdoors at Loudmire. Here's a new museum. It's in Fenton. It's the Lazarus Pinball Machine Museum. And your question, of course, is, can you play them? And the answer is yes. All the pinball machines can be played here at this museum. The Lemp Brewery Museum does have a little section on the history of Lemp beer. Lemp beer was the first lager in the United States. So it's an important beer in the history of beer brewing. Lewis and Clark, you saw where they were at where they camped out waiting for the Louisiana Purchase to be authenticated. Here is a museum on the other side over the river in St. Charles, on the other side of the Mississippi. Lewis and Clark Museum. Now, this is a place in Arnold that manufactures giant life-size dinosaurs. That's what they do. And they will let you come in and roam around. They have giant life-size dinosaurs for you to look at, but by appointment, because they are a business, they are working and creating these giant dinosaurs down there in Arnold. Yes. Edwardsville, there's a County Historical Museum. They are right now doing a exhibit on the Mississippi River Festival, the wonderful festival that you may have gone to in younger days, where they had people like Janis Joplin perform, people like Bob Hope perform, and there's all this memorabilia now on display to the end of this month. They might extend it. If you really want to see it, make sure you go this month, because it already has been extended. We don't know whether it'll be extended again. And this is another exhibit inside the Historical Society. The Magic House for kids, these little kids. The Magic House has made an effort to get teenagers interested. So what they did is they built a replica of the Oval Office, the White House. And unfortunately, it didn't attract a teenager. It attracted a toddler. Maryville Heritage Museum over in Maryville. Coal mining is a big deal over in that, over on that side in Illinois, just honeycombed with coal mines. And that would be a big industry over there. Our whirlwind takes us to another part of Illinois, Mascoutah. They have an exhibit on their history that also looked like a schoolhouse turned into a museum. The Mastodon State Historic Site is an imperial, and it is a nice museum with all these displays for you, including a real mastodon skeleton. Boeing does have the prologue room. It's called the McDonald Prologue Room, and it's in this building here, and just lots and lots of things about flight. So that is worth visiting. Watch for, make sure you know, don't go unless you know exactly when it's open. The hours are a little unusual. McKendree University has a museum in that building. No, I think that's just the campus there. And here it is in the building. It would be things about McKendree College, or now McKendree University over in Lebanon. Well, the Merrimack Valley Historical Museum had a problem, as you can see here. This was a flood, I believe, I forget for the year of the flood, but the museum decided it was just going to put everything in storage, and hope for better days. Better days have come along, and their stuff is now on display at the Red Cedar Inn. And as you know, we're going alphabetically through the museums. So Red Cedar Inn is coming up later, and we'll take a look at that. That's a new one. The Mercantile Library Art Museum, under a pyramid mimicking the Louvre in Paris. But this art museum has, let's have this question for you. Who drew this bird? I think you know the guy who did it, John James Audubon. And next question is, who used to own this drawing? And the answer is Rose Audubon, John's sister. And this drawing is on display in St. Louis at the Mercantile. Yes. And the book, of course, was The Birds of America. And this is also a sculpture in the Art Museum by Harriet Hosmer. There is a story behind her and St. Louis. Basically, she got her, she learned anatomy here in St. Louis. And she's got a couple other statues here in St. Louis, but she has sculptures all around the country. But there's an Airbnb museum. There's a museum you can stay in overnight. Yes, it's in Belleville, and it's a mid-century modern architecture museum. You can spend the night in a museum in the Airbnb system. The Mildred Lane Kemper Art Museum, you can see, is a nice contemporary building. It's over in Wash U. You go inside, and you'll notice there's a stairway. And this will give you a different experience if you go up the stairs than if you stay on the first floor. If you stay on the first floor at the Mildred Lane Kemper, this is where they have traveling exhibits that are loaned to them by other institutions, by other museums. So they have a lot of guards on the first floor because these things come from other museums, so they want to be very careful with them. Not so many guards upstairs, which means you can come face to face with Picasso. It'll just be you and Picasso staring back at you because there's only a few guards upstairs. Most of them are on the main floor. And it's for Washington University. So there's like, this museum is to show art students one of everything, one Art Deco, one this, one that, one Thomas Eakins, and so forth. So there's quite a variety up there to look at. going across the ages. The Miniature Museum of St. Louis. This is a website called Atlas Obscura, talked about this museum and said the intricacy and breadth of the collection is truly astounding. These are basically doll houses and lots of them in this museum in St. Louis. Our whirlwind takes us to the Civil War Museum. And for the Civil War Museum, I'm going to show you a dollar bill because this guy, Mark Trout, a former Marine, was driving by this building. And at that point, it was surplus housing, surplus property for the federal government. And the federal government will sell you surplus property for $1. And you will become entitled to that property if you turn that building into something worthwhile, and you have 9 years to do it. Mark Trout, very magnetic personality. He got people to help him. He got this museum created actually in 8 years, 362 days. And it is now the Missouri Civil War Museum in an old PX gymnasium, actually, old gymnasium. PX next door is also part of this museum. Nicely done down there on Jefferson Barracks. Oh, Missouri History Museum. How did they pay for the Missouri History Museum? They paid with the proceeds from the 1904 World's Fair. One of the few World's Fairs to make a profit. Our World's Fair made a profit. So here's the History Museum, and has won an award for diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion. And they have just opened up in April a redone 1904 World's Fair exhibit. So this is just totally redid the exhibit, and how appropriate in a building that was paid for by proceeds from the World's Fair to have an exhibit for the World's Fair. Now, this is a page in a magazine from Japan about this little museum in Valley Park, Missouri. So if you are familiar with Japanese, I'll give you a couple moments here where you can read this description of the Missouri Marmite Museum in Valley Park. And Marmite is not a Japanese product, it's a British product. It's a yeast extract similar to Australia's Vegemite. And you can go by appointment only. Here's a picture of the curator of the Marmite Museum. And the answer is, what does he look like with a beard? Right here, right here. Yes, that's me. Okay. Monroe County History Museum over in Waterloo. They are very proud of their museum. I know next week they're doing a talk on Jesse James, but they also mainly focus on the area around Waterloo for their museum. In the Cathedral Basilica, Cathedral Basilica is the largest collection of mosaics in the world. This building is 17 stories tall, and the walls are covered with mosaics. And therefore, what do they have in their basement? A mosaic museum, where you can learn more about these mosaics, which are just astonishing to visit. The Moto Museum, Moto, actually is short for motorcycle, and they specialize in European motorcycles. The Munganess Classic Car and Motorcycle Museum, that is available. That's in St. Louis. Now, the museum at the Gateway Arch, you may know, it has been redone, actually totally redone. So if you haven't been, please make an effort to get there. It's much more interactive than the previous version of the museum was, and you get to do things like sit in a fake wooden canoe. Museum of Contemporary Religious Art is on the SLU campus. Be appropriate, and there's an example of what you might expect to see at Makra. Museum of Illusions is new. It's at the City Foundry. You can go in and do things like do a handstand on a diner bench, and impress people with your agility. The Museum of Illusions. We now go to the Museum, which is in Town and Country. Museum's scientifically fun. So the idea is to teach science to kids. And they have things like this thing full of, so you can just go through and make motion here. And this museum in TripAdvisor, this museum is considered the #1 thing to do in Town and Country. In fact, the TripAdvisor says there's only one thing worth doing in Town and Country, which is this museum. Well, TripAdvisor, what about St. Louis? What's #1 of 254 things to do in St. Louis? And they say, these are the people who vote on TripAdvisor, the zoo is #1 for #1 thing to visit in St. Louis. Something else to visit in St. Louis, the National Blues Museum has various displays, nicely done, and has a number of different rooms to go in, and has an auditorium, and they do music there. Every Thursday night, there's a blues jam. They have record release parties. They have concerts. So you can do more than just look at museum exhibits. You can listen to live music. The National Building Arts Center, we have a live musician. He is playing a saxophone, and he is welcoming this Statue of Liberty to the National Building Arts Center. The National Building Arts Center collects pieces of buildings of architectural significance. This Statue of Liberty was in Brooklyn, and Brooklyn sent it out here to be a permanent home. And I think by now it's probably standing up at the entrance to the National Building Arts Center. You can get tours, so make sure you can go through on your own, but tours are a little bit better because there's just so many things to look at there. Here's an example of somebody collecting pieces of the Lincoln Trust Building. Then that will go to the National Building Arts Center, which is acres and acres of stuff. And then what caught my eye, a ticket to hear Winston Churchill talk out at Westminster College in Fulton. This is where the phrase Iron Curtain comes from, the talk, and you can see this ticket in the National Building Arts Center. The NGA has a museum, and it is about the history of the NGA, which you know is a spy agency. It spies on other countries, not on us. It's because it's a federal agency. And this museum, however, is just for employees, so not for the general public. Another government museum, National Great Rivers Museum. This is the Army Corps of Engineers. And they're talking about things they have done for the Mississippi River. For example, they cleared all the silt off out of the riverfront in St. Louis, so St. Louis could be a city of shipping city. And that was done by some dikes that moved the.
I'm waiting for Kamala, actually.
I'm excited.
They changed the flow of the river so it swept the silt away from St. Louis's riverfront, and it was Robert E. Lee who did the designing for that. Not only can you see exhibits inside the National Great Rivers Museum, you can look down at the locks in the Mississippi and watch ships go through the locks. The National Museum of Transportation near Kirkwood, things that transport you like planes, cars, trains. That's engine number 952. That is controversial because there's an East Coast state that wants this locomotive back. They claim it's theirs and it's New Jersey. We're not giving it to them. That is the paperwork for them suing us. Neon Museum, that's during the daytime. You want to go there at night. It's in St. Louis. Who can pronounce this name? It's New Athens, Illinois. They have their own museum, which has about all the industrial activity in New Athens over there in Illinois. O'Fallon, Illinois has a historical museum. There are two O'Fallons. This one is in Illinois, Historical Museum. The other O'Fallon is in Missouri, and it is a log cabin museum. The Old Cathedral Museum, you follow that blue arrow. It's not in the Old Cathedral, it's next to the Old Cathedral, and it has a gift shop, and you can visit and see various artifacts. Completely renovated, opened in May of this year, opened in May. The old courthouse, this is currently closed for renovations, but they are aiming to reopen in spring of 2025. Be nice to have that working again. The old fire engine museum in Granite City is full of fire engines of one particular manufacturer, the American LaFrance company, their fire engines. Here's the old ordnance room. Listen to this name from a song, or get me the name, or think of the name of this song from 1917.
Tell your sweetheart not to pine, to be proud of our boys in line. Over there, send the word over there.
So the song is called Over There. They had an exhibit about World War I in Europe. They called that exhibit Over There. Then they had an exhibit about World War I and Jefferson Barracks. What did they call that exhibit? They called it Over Here. All right. Old 6 Mile Museum in Granite City. How many miles from St. Louis to Granite City? 6. So they have a museum there at the 6 Mile Prairie in Granite City. Again, cars for sale and for viewing, Overstreet Museum. Ozzy Osbourne, Black Sabbath, that museum is somewhere in Princeton Heights, and it is jam-packed with Ozzy Osbourne stuff. Yes. This is an odd little museum. It was run by a guy who was a big railroad enthusiast. They sold the building. He couldn't afford the rent because the previous owners had let him run his museum for free. He complained to some people that he couldn't pay the rent. These people bought the building for him. And the interesting thing is these people were tourists from Australia. They bought the building for him, but now the building appears to be empty again. I'm not quite sure what's going on with the Railfan Museum out there in Pacific. Play Street Museum in St. Charles is for kids. Notice a little pet rescue thing. Get kids used to rescuing pets, start them early. The Powder Magazine Museum is also in Jefferson Barracks. Here's the interior with artifacts from Jefferson Barracks. But notice the ceiling. The ceiling is dimpled. Why is it dimpled? Because they used to store gunpowder here. Gunpowder is explosive. If gunpowder were to explode inside this building, if the ceiling were flat, the entire ceiling would fall down, but it's dimpled, so just that section of ceiling will fall down. Powder Magazine Museum. Also, Jefferson Barracks, prisoners of war missing in action, salute to them at Jefferson Barracks. Pulitzer Foundation for the Arts, just look at that building, it's eye-catching, eye-catching. This is the architect, and he is a rock star. So it's his first building in America. Notice how he lights the building, reflected light off water. This is to be gentle light to not destroy the artwork. The artwork, by the way, in this museum doesn't have a label. It doesn't tell you who painted it, doesn't tell you what the name is, doesn't tell you the year, because it wants you to experience the artwork without being influenced, right? Now, Pulitzer Center for the Arts, Mr. Pulitzer, what was his first name? Joseph. And what is the name of this walk-in sculpture? It's Joe, in honor of Joseph. That is behind the Pulitzer and behind the Contemporary Art Museum as well. Please go into this sculpture because you will find it changes your world. It changes your world. Before this was installed in St. Louis, they installed it in Central Park, New York, and New Yorkers are furious that it got moved here. They don't think we deserve this. They don't think we deserve this. So check it out. It's free. It's free. Redbud Area Museum would be Redbud memorabilia. Here's the Red Cedar Inn. It had many iterations. It originally was a restaurant built by bootleggers who lost their jobs because Prohibition was ending, and they built this inn. Over the years. Various things happened to it, but now it is a visitors center with a history basically of the area and Route 66. Speaking of Route 66, this building was a roadhouse, means an isolated restaurant, and it is now the visitor center for Route 66 State Park with lots of things about Route 66 and about Times Beach. Safety House is for teaching kids about how to be safe in fires. Here's an oven fire, and they are very, this is run by police departments to educate kids. Oh, what did Adolph Sax invent? He invented the saxophone, and we have a saxophone museum down there on Cherokee Street with a little history. Saxophones used to be manufactured in the United States. They're now manufactured in Asia. Musical instruments come from Asia. Here's our science center, and we have the planetarium lit up at night, and it's quite a nice building. As you know, it goes across Route 64, and if you want free parking, go park in the Forest Park parking lot, not in the parking lots that's south of Route 64. Whirlwind military base in St. Louis celebrated centennial in 2017. That's Scott Air Force Base. There's some fireworks for the centennial, and they have an air park, which are these planes that you can go and walk around and look at. The Selfie Express Interactive Train Selfie Museum is in Union Station, where you can pose for various photographs related to trains. The Sheldon Art Galleries, we're going to put, they have many different exhibits, some of them temporary, one of them is permanent. It's musical instruments. What is this instrument? That is a flugelhorn. And that's part of the exhibit at the Sheldon Art Galleries. They are very much into instruments because they have this instrument drive for you to donate your instrument, and they give these instruments to schools to further music education in St. Louis. New, the Soda Museum and Main Street Arcade. So you can come in and look at the largest collection of soda memorabilia, according to them. And you can play arcade games as well to make it a nice visit to St. Charles. Soldiers Memorial Military Museum has been redone. A nice amount of money was spent. It's now under the authority of the Missouri History Museum, and they now focus on how St. Louis related to war conflicts. And it is basically new. If you haven't been there in a couple of years, should go back and take a look. Amateur Sports Hall of Fame in St. Charles. And St. Charles has this Heritage Museum, which you can see is more than a house, two houses. It's all this here, a very worthwhile museum visiting. Nicely located right next to the interstate, so you can basically see it and then go park and enjoy the exhibits in it. And it had a birthday cake for the 250th birthday. St. Clair County, Missouri Historical Museum, their museum is in this building here. What happened in St. Clair on August 21st, 2017? Total eclipse of the sun out in St. Clair. We now come back to St. Louis in Busch Stadium. The Baseball Hall of Fame, Amateur Baseball Hall of Fame has a display there in Busch Stadium. So obviously you have to go when there's a game on to see this exhibit. St. Louis Art Museum, that's the old building. This is the Eastern building. And right now, this is their latest exhibit from the New Deal era. The idea of the New Deal was to put people to work. So they gave money to artists to paint, and these will be paintings from actually all over the country that are gathered here for this exhibit at our museum. St. Louis Car Museum, these people are visiting the museum. They are a group. They're a group called Kiwis on Route 66. Where are they from? They're from New Zealand, and Route 66 goes right through St. Louis. St. Louis Fire Department Museum, nicely done museum, various memorabilia, and right there you can also look at fire engines. The Marcel is sort of like a event space in Midtown, and the St. Louis Media History Gallery is there. Here's an example, but you would see this is a cartoon by Bill Veeck, a St. Louisan. The St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame has an exhibit in the Enterprise Center. St. Louis University Museum of Art has a whole bunch. You can see it's 3 stories tall. I don't think they use that upstairs there, but they have the art collection of the Cartier family, the jewelry family from Paris, France. Why would these people in Paris, France, donate their fine art to a small museum like this one here near the St. Louis University campus? Well, think about it. If they donated to the Louvre in Paris, where would their art be today? It would be in the basement of the Louvre. But here it's on display because it's a small museum and it is being treasured. The other reason why they would donate is their daughter attended SLU. St. Stanislaus Museum in Florissant. Here is about being missionaries to Native Americans. The Steel Guitar Hall of Fame was in the Millennium Hotel. It's closed. So now that Hall of Fame is in storage and online. We're going to the Botanical Gardens. This is the old library, but it's now a museum, the new entrance, and delightful interior. What happened to the books? The books went over to the Peter Raven Library over on Vandeventer. The World Shooting and Recreation Complex, Trap Shooting Hall of Fame. Here are some women who are in the Trap Shooting Hall of Fame from various states. Let's see. Harrison is from California, Jenner is from Wisconsin, Munson is from Minnesota, and Oakley is from Ohio. Yes, Annie's in a museum over there in Illinois. Speaking of Illinois, over in Edwardsville, St. Louis University has a museum. There's a picture of the interior. Weldon Springs, that if you would recognize, is covering up radioactive waste. And there is an exhibit, interpretive center, where you can learn about all sorts of things, not just radioactive waste over there in St. Charles. Wildwood, where you're looking at their museum and research library. It's all these buildings, they each have a different function. So you have various things you can see over there in Wildwood. And there's an interesting, they did a bus tour of one-room schoolhouses. Yes, thought that was an interesting thing to do. The Wood River Museum, guess where it is? Wood River, and it does the history of Wood River. But the Wood River Refinery History Museum is in Roxana, where the refinery was, but they called it the Wood River Refinery Museum. There we have a view inside. Okay, and we're going to visit the World Chess Hall of Fame. I believe this is our final museum to visit, and you are looking at the world's largest chess piece. But inside the museum, the world of chess is interesting, and there's just all sorts of things inside the World Chess Hall of Fame. Okay, so we have done a whirlwind look at 120 museums in the St. Louis area, and I'm Doug Schneider. But remember, the St. Charles City County Library is going to send you a list of all the museums that I have found in the St. Louis area. There are more in the list than you saw in the show, and the list will only be real museums, not house museums. Again, there are 89 house museums. They're not going to be on your list. The list will have 158 museums. But coming to the St. Charles Library, we're going to have a talk on Scotland coming up. So be aware that Scotland is coming up. And then cemeteries in St. Louis, there'll be a talk on those coming up. And aviation history in St. Louis. All of them via Zoom and the same format that you are enjoying right now. So we're going to say that that's the end of the show. I'm going to stop. And there's me with my beard. And
All right.
we have some chat questions. Okay.
Thank you, Doug. That was wonderful. I have a whole list of notes.
All right.
I have a question. Does your list include the cities that the museums are in? The one
Yeah,
that you're
oh,
sending out?
yes. Yes. The first time I made the list, I didn't put the cities. And then I realized I'm going to save people work and just have the cities.
Yes, because I think like you can pick a place and just go do several of those in that one location.
Yeah, especially Greenville, Illinois.
Greenville, yeah, that's what I was thinking about. Yeah.
Spend a day for sure. For sure. Okay. So looking for questions. Oh,
Yeah,
somebody's
questions.
been to the fast lane and likes the fast lane.
Oh, that's me.
That's you. Oh, Shauna.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Then Michelle was one of our hosts here, likes COBOL much better than Fortran. So she remembered those days when it wasn't like English. It was its own, computer languages were their own language. Shauna knows one. Okay. Oh, this is for folks. There are being events presented by the Holocaust Museum in the St. Charles City County Library system coming up on September 9th and October 9th. And that means you can just go to the website, go down to events, and find out what's going on with those Holocaust Museum events. All right. All right. Now, Anne is telling us about the miniature museum. You see, it caught the attention of the Atlas. Oh, forget the name now, but that of a national website. But here we have a local person went there this summer, 2 stories, few rooms, but a lot of doll houses, and a couple hours wasn't quite long enough.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why Atlas Obscura, there we go. That's why this outside organization got excited about this museum. 2 hours wasn't quite enough. Yes. All right. Oh, Shauna, you had a flugelhorn in your home.
Yeah, she played the flugelhorn for the marching band in Washington, Missouri.
Oh, okay. I didn't know there were still flugelhorns. Well, I guess there are still flugelhorns around. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Cindy says thank you, and Krista Wolf says thank you, and all right, and it's astonishing how many museums there are. This is the museums I found. There might be more, but the list that you're going to get is 258. And then don't forget, there's also 89 house museums that are not included. So,
Oh, yeah.
yes, all sorts of things. And somebody who has been to Greenville thinks, we got all those museums to watch. You're going to need some refreshment.
Yeah.
And here is Patty. She is suggesting visiting the dairy. And I hope that dairy has ice cream. Oh, yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
she says, yeah, wonderful
Wonderful
ice cream cones.
cones. Yes, and she's even recommending the rum cha-ta-ta for a flavor. But maybe there are other flavors. Maybe they'll let you have more than one ice cream cone. All right.
Yeah.
Krista is a friend of the Monroe County History Museum, only open on the weekends, and they do have lectures there. So I have known people from Waterloo who are very proud of that museum. And Pete says, thank you. And
Yeah.
if you have a question or a comment, you can unmute yourselves.
Okay.
All right.
And I will say thank you too for bringing this wonderful presentation to us. And thank you to our participants for joining us tonight. Keep an eye out for that follow-up email. It will have a recording of this program, a survey, and the list that Mr. Schneider has mentioned with all the museums in the St. Louis area that he has found. Thank you for completing the survey that's in that email. It will help us when we're planning future programs. Consider us for joining Doug's next presentation on Scotland, the Lion in the North. And that would be Thursday, September 12th, starting at 7. And everybody here knows how to get on our events calendar and sign up for that program. In addition, feel free to visit our website, stchlibrary.org, to explore more programs and events happening at the library, both in person or virtual, along with many other services that we have to offer. Thank you for joining us tonight.